Good evening and welcome to Next on the Tee with Chris Mascaro, where PGA and LPGA players, legends, and top instructors go to share their stories, insights, and playing lessons. Join Chris every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern Time as he talks with the greats of the game. Tonight's show is sponsored by the French Lick Resort, Ben Hogan Golf, the PGA Tour Superstore, 2 Under, the Salt Creek Golf Retreat, TaylorMade Golf, the Bobby Jones Apparel Company, and Superspeed Golf. Now, here's your host, Chris Mascaro.
Hey, hello everyone, and welcome to this week's edition of Next on the Tee, and happy U.S. Open week to you. Doesn't it feel better when it's the week of a major? There's always a little more anticipation in the air. We're certainly going to talk a lot about the tournament tonight, and I think there's a little more buzz with this year's tournament than maybe we've seen over the last decade or so. We've got Brooks Koepka trying to three-peat, something we haven't seen since Curtis Strange won back-to-back U.S. Opens in 1988 and 89. Tiger's got everyone hopeful that he can win a second major this year. Will we get to see Tiger, the Tiger we saw at Augusta National, or are we going to see the Tiger that we saw at the PGA? He was pretty unspectacular at the Memorial a couple of weeks ago outside of the final round, but we all know his history at Pebble Beach and how he lapped the field in 2000. Boy, a final pairing if he and Brooks Koepka on Sunday. Wouldn't that be fun to watch, to see those two guys battle down the stretch? We got Dustin Johnson, right? He's always around the top of the leaderboard in the U.S. Open. He finished tied for second in 2018 at the Pebble Beach Pro-Am, third at the U.S. Open. He finished tied for second at the Masters and alone in second at the PGA this year. So we can expect to see his name at the top of the leaderboard on Sunday. What about Jordan Spieth? Is he going to be able to put 4 rounds together? You know, boy, we sure haven't seen that in a little while, right? But earlier this year at the Pebble Beach Pro-Am, he shot opening rounds of 66 and 68 before struggling over the weekend. But he's got 3 straight top 10s, folks, and a tied for third at the PGA. So maybe he'll continue that. Maybe he'll be back. This seems like a course that could be good for him because length is not going to be as much of an issue. And speaking of the Pebble Beach Pro-Am, Phil Mickelson won it earlier this year and finished tied for second last year, second again in 2016. So this could be his last best chance to complete the career Grand Slam. So yeah, an exciting weekend ahead. And speaking of what's ahead, tonight I've got an all-star lineup that I am very excited to share with you. My first guest is going to be the voice of golf, Peter Kessler. You all know how much Peter has meant to me over the years. And for those of you who follow me on social media, you saw that over the weekend I made a request about following and subscribing to the show on a new podcasting site called Launchpad DM. It's a site that Podcast One uses to perhaps, take a look at some new shows and what they might want to put out on the air. So, folks, if you don't mind, please go over to launchpaddm.com and subscribe to the show. We'd really, really appreciate it if you do that for us. Anyway, the first person to reach out to me and say, hey, anything you need, let me know, was Peter Kessler. That's who Peter Kessler is. And beyond that, nobody knows the history of the game of golf better than Peter does. So we'll talk about some of the great interviews he's done around the U.S. Open with players like Payne Stewart, Curtis Strange, and Jack Nicklaus as well. And it is really always an honor and a privilege when Peter joins me on the show, and I'm really looking forward to catching up with him in just a few minutes. Following Peter, I'm going to get a return visit from one of the top instructors in the game and another great friend, and that's Rob Stano. Had the privilege of spending some time with Rob when I was in Destin, Florida earlier this year. You know what? He took one look at my swing and said, you know what? I can help you improve. And you just got to change one thing. And I was like, hey, great. What? He said everything. So we'll talk about that, plus some putting tips as well. Rob will join me at the bottom of the hour. Following Rob, Golf Tips Magazine Top 25 instructor Tom Patri is going to be back with me. I'll talk to TP about Pebble Beach, get some tips for how to play better in windy conditions like the guys are likely to face this weekend. We'll also get some tips on how to improve your short game, particularly, as Gary Player always says, how to turn 3 strokes into 2 from 100 yards in. Tom will join me about 45 minutes from now. And then we're going to round out tonight's show with a visit from Chris Finn. Chris is the founder of Par 4 Success, and that's the number 4, so P-A-R, the number 4 Success. They work on improving strength and conditioning, right? That's what their big thing is, so they can help us figure out a way to get a little looser, build up a little strength, get a little more distance and yardage when we're out playing on the golf course, because when you're a little looser, you can swing a little faster, hit the ball a little further. They're located up in Cary, North Carolina. I'll talk with Chris about how to assess all of those things. He's got some great exercises and some great ways to get through that. So we'll talk all about that, plus data to prove what exercises you need to get the most out of your game. So there's some exercises that are going to go along with some numbers that are going to point right to where our issues are. So we'll talk about that and a whole lot more when Chris joins me about an hour from now. So there you go, folks. We got a lot more great stories and information coming your way tonight on this edition of Next on the Tee. And as always, thank you so much for tuning in and taking the journey with me tonight. Before we get started, I always like to remind you about my good friends Mitchell and Matthew Lawrence. They've got a couple of great podcasts and a great radio show that you need to be listening to. Mitch's show is called Talking Golf Getaways, and he and his co-host Aaron Bunce, they let you know about great places to stay, play, and even eat and drink while you're there. You can stream their podcast over on Golf Trip X, and that's the letter X, so golftripx.com. Also available on Audio Boom, Stitcher, and Player.fm. They're going to let you know about some of the great hidden gems that we have around the country. His twin brother Matthew, also a great show. It's called Backspin Golf. It airs Sunday mornings from 8 to 9 a.m. Eastern Time on WLXD, ESPN Radio, AM 1300 up in Lexington, Kentucky. And that show, geez, it's so much fun listening to Matthew and our good friend Perry French as well, talking about golf and great places or great ways to improve your game. Perry's got a lot of great instruction that he shares, and Matthew's got a lot of great interviews. Always so much fun because Matthew makes the show so much fun. Again, it's called Backspin Golf, and it's on WLXG.com or download the WLXG app, and you can listen Sunday mornings from 8 to 9 a.m. Eastern Time. And folks, as you know, we are sponsored by the French Lick Resort. Let's hear from Steve Rondinero about what they've got going on up there this summer.
It's a Pete Dye masterpiece, the Pete Dye course at French Lick Resort. Pete says its location on one of the highest points in Indiana makes it special.
The long views, you can see maybe 20 and 30 miles from many of the fairways and many of the tees and greens. And you can see it in 360 degrees.
Donald Ross's Hill Course put French Lick on the golf map more than 100 years ago. It's where Walter Hagen won the 1924 PGA Championship, and the place where today's Symetra Tour ladies battle each year.
It's the ambience around it that makes the golf course.
Combine our many resort amenities with legendary golf, and you have a getaway like no other. French Lick Resort is the home of the Senior LPGA Championship, won in 2018 by World Golf Hall of Famer Laura Davies. Play the courses champions play. Plan your trip now, online at FrenchLick.com.
Yeah, folks, go online to FrenchLick.com to book your stay and to see what a wonderful place they've got up there as well. And oh, by the way, folks, they got a casino right there on the property as well. Now back with me on the French Lick Resort guest line, as you all know, is one of my all-time favorite guests, and that's the voice of golf, Peter Kessler. Be sure to follow Peter on his Facebook page and over on Twitter, @Peter Kessler. Over the last couple of weeks, he's been putting out snippets of the great interviews he's done with former U.S. Open champions. So there's so many of them. They're all fantastic. Sort of a run-up to the U.S. Open. Go on his Twitter page and check those out. And just like everything Peter does, those interviews are very insightful and really take you into the mindset that those players had. And you get stories you didn't hear anywhere else than on Peter's Golf Talk live show back when he was on the Golf Channel. And that show by far is the best golf program ever. Also, be sure to check out Peter's website, peterkessler.com, and book him for an event. Listen to some of his archive episodes of his podcast, which was called Reading the Break, which was also fantastic. We've got some links back to that over on our site, nextonthetee.net. And like I always say, no one knows the history of the game of golf better than Peter does. And it's always an honor and a privilege to have him as part of the show. And I'm very excited he's back with me tonight here on Next on the Tee. Good evening, Peter. How are you, my friend?
I'm not fooled by any of this. I know exactly what's going on here. So you get 4 stud muffins to be on the show. So you have the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. Guess who's the lead horse? Guess who gets to go first? Guess who has to carry the load? I heard you go through all the subjects you're going to cover with the other 3 guys. I crossed off 9 of the 10 on my list. You left basically nothing. So I'm going, sure, he's going to just put me on the spot and make me come up with something, completely off the list, off the charts that he didn't think of. And I've already got one, which is setup. And I want to talk to you about setup because my philosophy has actually come full circle on this. When I was growing up, when I was, say, in my 20s, and they had the Wingfoot Massacre in 1974, where 7 over by Hale Irwin won, and the year before, Johnny Miller had torched Oakmont in the final round with 9 birdies and an 8 under par final round. to win the championship. So they made it a little harder, obviously, in 74. But the way they did that was they just made really long rough, and they made the greens hard, and they made the greens fast, and the weather cooperated, and you just had to put the ball in play, whatever that took. You know, Jack Nicklaus and Ben Hogan always said the most important thing is to be in position off the tee, and it doesn't matter what club you hit. You know, just because you're on a tee 14 times, that isn't a par 3 doesn't mean it's a driver. And in a lot of U.S. Opens and major championships, Nicklaus 3-wooded his way around all of those places because he could hit it almost as far as his driver. He could certainly hit it straighter, and he could position it in sections of the fairway. So that was really the test, you know, right through 2004 at Shinnecock when they lost the golf course. So then they had a shift in management. And then, unfortunately, they made a shift by people who didn't have enough knowledge to do so in the philosophy of how a U.S. Open golf course should be set up. So it started in 2005 at Pinehurst. Wasn't a lot, little bit. And we got into graduated rough so that if you were just off the fairway, not too bad. A little further, it was worse. A little farther, it was horrid. That didn't seem to work. Conceptually, it didn't seem like a bad idea. And so what happened is they had this series of experiments where we've gone to an eclectic group of golf courses, including Erin Hills and Chambers Bay and places that hadn't held the U.S. Opens before. Chambers Bay was granted the U.S. Open before it was even a golf course. So that was pretty stunning. So you've had an unusual group of places that you've gone, and then an untraditional series of setups. Think back to Martin Keimer winning at Pinehurst after Gordon Crenshaw came in and redid the golf course. So there was no rough off of the fairways. It was just, you know, scrubland, but totally playable by a 15 handicapper. And unfortunately for the audience, he won by a zillion shots, and the whole thing was extremely boring. And nobody was required to hit a pitching club around the greens. Martin Keimer had the chipping yips at that time in his career. People don't know that. But he never had to loft a shot around the greens. He putted everything. You go back and look, he putted everything. So what I thought was, okay, what should we do now? Okay, now that we're here, what needs to happen now? And I finally realized that what needs to happen now is you need to go back to traditional U.S. Open setups. The Masters is unique for a number of reasons. One, it's played on the same golf course every year. Two, everybody who watches it knows it as well as they know their home golf course. Three, you know, we expect stuff on the back nine on Sundays, and they've been good about that the last few years, letting the fireworks occur, letting guys make birdie on 13 and 15 and 16 like Tiger did in the final round when he won. So it's always had a unique identity. And if you look at the Open Championship, you know, generally that's dictated by the weather. Basically, you know, if you and I play there on Sunday, on Sunday, you know, Monday the guys come in, they don't really do anything different. They play up the tees a little bit further back, but they can't speed up the greens because if the wind comes up, the ball's going to roll. The greens are 3 and 4 times larger than the ones at Pebble Beach this week. So the green speeds are such that you have to push the ball to the hole. You can't roll and let the ball die to the hole at the old course. So weather dictates the Open Championship. PGA has had a more PGA Tour-like identity. Let the guys score, try to pick a good golf course. Now we're picking some U.S. Open courses, but I think their identity is a little bit muddy still at this point. But the U.S. Open had a clear-cut identity. It was ribbon fairways, it was long rough, it was fast, hard greens, no chipping areas, and figure out a way to put the ball in play. And so I'm hoping that's what we have this week, because given that the golf course is short enough that a Francesco Molinari could win where he couldn't have won at Bethpage or couldn't have won at Shinnecock for a variety of reasons, including unregulated equipment, and a golf course that was so long that only a couple of guys could play it both last year and this. The same two guys finished first and second in the U.S. Open last year as they did this year because they were the two longest hitters, Brooks and DJ, and they could hit the ball 30 yards by everybody else and hit shorter, higher irons in, and of course they're going to finish 1-2. So I would like to see Pebble go back to that setup. Now, in June, in Pebble Beach, you really can't count on that kind. You don't know what you're going to get. I mean, weather's always the biggest factor in any golf tournament, because it's the one thing you can't control, and it's the one thing you need to be prepared for in the best way that you possibly can, for everything that can happen from wind to rain to whatever. So because Pebble's short, because the longest hitters are going to just nudge stuff into play where it's appropriate and prudent to do so, anybody can win. So it ought to be a put the ball in play course this week. Long rep would be appropriate. The greens are not going to be hard. I watched the weather. I haven't looked at anything on TV about the golf course, but I lived there for a couple of years when I was much younger, and I know what the June weather is like. And I'm guessing the greens could be softish, and the element that needs to occur is a little bit of wind. Now, the wind will make the greens play half their size, and they're already the smallest set of greens really anywhere. They're 3,500 square feet on average. The tour average is 7,500 square feet. Of course, St. Andrews is 10,000 plus square feet because most of the holes are double green. So I think a really good test would be a traditional U.S. Open setup. You let the super, who has for the last 3,650 days, maintain that golf course every day since the last time the USGA was there. You let him make the decision. I believe they have made an agreement to let the super dictate what's going on this week. I don't think they're going to have corporate guys from the USGA make decisions about a golf course that they haven't been to in 10 years, and this guy lives there. And the guys from the USGA aren't trained in this kind of work. They're just corporate guys that show up in blazers. You don't show up in blazers to work in the dirt. So I'm hoping for a traditional setup, and I've come back round to that's what the Open needs to be again. Put the damn thing in play, figure out a way to put it on the green, 2-putt, get out of town. If the course yields to brilliance because the weather cooperates, then so be it. 2 under a day is a fine score to have. Because if the weather's perfect and they can't shoot under par 1 or 2 under the winner each day on average for the week, 4 under, 6 under, 8 under, then the golf course is tricked up. But if the course will yield to the brilliance of the best player for the week, then a 1 or 2 under a day is a reasonable score to have this week at the U.S. Open.
So, Peter, to take that to the next step, right, one of the things that you talked about and is spot on, of course, is Brooks and DJ finishing 1-2 the last couple of years. And you talked to Jack Nicklaus once upon a time about Pebble Beach. And one of the things that he talked about is, look, if the weather's benign, and the forecast for this week is partly cloudy, high 65, winds about 10 to 12 miles an hour, not terrible. So the course can be gettable. 65 or 66, I think he said to you, is an easy quote unquote score when Pebble is playing, in benign conditions. So if that's the case, and if they grow the rough up, which is what we've heard, is the rough is going to be high, how many guys does that bring back into the tournament? It doesn't seem like at 7,000, just under 7,100 yards, and I say this tongue in cheek, not that far to what we've seen Augusta National grow the length of the course to. Certainly not what we saw at Bethpage Black. So I think that brings more players into the game. Do you think this is going to be, if the weather conditions are benign, a course that is gettable and that is going to bring a lot more players back into the tournament?
I would say Jack's memory on that is not accurate because, you go back to 72, I think he was a couple over for the week, and his final round, 74, was the best round of the day in 72. When Watson won in 82, I think he was 5 or 6 under, and Jack was 2 back. So that's not 6 under a day. There are certain times when it is gettable. Remember that Tiger was the only guy under par in 2000 for a whole host of reasons, one of which is he's one of the most magical players that ever lived, but he was the only guy under par, and it was a traditional U.S. Open setup. So Jack is right in that you can get a 66, but you can't get a whole bunch of them. And because the greens play small, 10 to 12 miles an hour in the wind is a 1 club wind. It's just enough to cut the effective size of the greens down by 1,000 square feet. So now you're 2,700 square feet. Those are small hitting surfaces. And so you're going to be tempted to put the ball a little closer to the green off the tee so you have less in because the surfaces are playing smaller. But you can't really do that because you can't forget that the only thing that's really important to stand on the tee is being in position to have the next easiest shot that you can possibly have. And that means not swinging as hard as you can with the driver. They're not going to need, even the medium hitters aren't going to need driver a lot. So it's the first time in a while that I can think of, a long time, that a Corey Pavin type player almost could win, who won at Shinnecock 95, and Greg Norman was second. And, and that was a really tough golf course. I was there all week. Phil Mickelson had a chance. He doubled 16 the last day. I think he doubled it once before as well. And so, Corey Pavin now hit driver 5 wood into 18. I was standing right there and watched the shot. Actually missed the 4 or 5 footer. People forget that, but he didn't actually need it. And Greg had nothing in. He could have thrown the ball underhanded onto the green. So, that was a keep it in play thing. But Corey Pavin was so good with his longer clubs that he was able to be more than competitive because he ended up being the winner. Now, I'm not so sure that's true now because of the way the equipment has affected the game, because from 1995 till today, the ball goes 45 or 47 yards longer off of the tee for the average player. Think of this. Phil Mickelson at almost 50 is almost 50 yards longer than he was at almost 30. Now, this is not the week to do bombs and all that crazy Phil talk. You got to remember, Phil won there this year, but it's a different golf course early in the year than it is in June. He's won there 5 times, so it's not exactly, be any surprises to him. But he knows he's going to have to keep it in play, and he knows that they're going to take certain holes and create sections of the fairway that then become rough. Take the first third of the right side of 11, you could turn that into the rough, or the first third of the left side of 11, so that the thing plays much more narrow than it would traditionally. So, they can narrow that place up, and that would have already been done by now, and the players already know what it is, and they know what clubs they're going to hit, and there's no surprises, and they've all played the golf course. Okay, so it's different earlier in the year, but still Pebble Beach. A pro only needs to play a golf course one time. He's going, okay, I got this. Not the local knowledge, something at Augusta over the years. You might pick up a shot occasionally because you know something, but they all get it. They're not stupid. They're not going to hit the wrong shot. How many times do you hit the wrong club? I never hit the wrong club. I may miss it. I may not hit the shot I want, but do I pick the right club? Yeah. So why does it take them so long to pick the right club? It takes me 2 seconds and I'm going to shoot 78. It should take them 2 seconds to shoot 68. And so I am hoping that narrow fairways don't cause Bryson to be picked up by an ambulance and taken to the 3rd floor at Bellevue for observation, with Jordan in the ambulance right behind him saying, we did this and we did that. It wasn't we, you did it. Jack Nicklaus never said we. He played. Caddy didn't play, he played. It's just we stuff.
Peter, I want to switch gears just a little bit. And you had a very interesting conversation with Curtis Strange a while back, and I watched that interview, and I was surprised to learn that following his back-to-back U.S. Open victories in 88 and 89, and he came close again in 1990, finished 6 strokes behind Hale Irwin, but he told you that following that tournament, that the air sort of came out of him. What do you think he meant by that?
Exactly what he said, that, Curtis had played some really good golf that whole decade. He had a chance to win a Masters that, he started with 80 in the first round and eventually made 6s on 13 and 15, and Longer ended up picking up that victory instead. And, Curtis was known as a really straight ball hitter and a really good iron player. And so, he goes ahead and he wins that Open over Nick Faldo, and they both said it was like playing myself, that they both had identical games put in play, hit the green, 2-putt, go to the next hole. And so he won that one. And then, then next year, he ended up shooting a 64, I think, in the first round at Oak Hill, and there weren't any 64s at Oak Hill to be had. And, and he went ahead and he won there. And then, and then he realized, you're not thinking at that point, oh, okay, next year and loop it up. But it doesn't work that way. When it gets here, it gets here. But when he was at Medina, and when he was in competition over the weekend, and when he was competitive over the weekend, and he had an opportunity to win 3 in a row, And when it didn't happen and he got in the car, he realized the enormity of what he had tried to achieve without actively thinking about it, like Bobby Jones thinking about the Grand Slam 4 years before he pulled it off. Sure, he wanted to win. Sure, he wanted to have 3 in a row, but he wasn't placing inordinate pressure on himself where he couldn't play his game that week. It didn't work like that if you're a really good player. And so it didn't happen. And so I think at that point, it was just like the pressure is off. I may never be able to do this again. No, I'm never going to do this again. I'm not going to win 2 U.S. Opens in a row anymore, am I? No, I'm not. Am I ever going to have a chance to win 3 in a row? Then we'll know. And so, have I reached my pinnacle? Has the best part happened? And he sat back and he said, "Yeah, I think the best part happened." And of course, it turned out to be true. And he never won again. And then 2 up with 3 to play in the singles, the Ryder Cup against Faldo, of all people, in '95. He lost the last 3 holes. And so that was the end of Curtis Strange. But the internal end, the walking back down from the top of Mount Everest, occurred at the conclusion of Medina, when he knew he wasn't going to walk that hill again. He might do some good stuff, but it wasn't going to be that mountain. It might be something out on the West Coast, a little easier to handle, but it wasn't going to be that one again.
Peter, one more before I let you go. And you had a very touching conversation with Payne Stewart. It was interesting to learn how much of Payne's focus was on winning a U.S. Open. And he did it twice, in '91 and '99. Talk about why that tournament was so important to Payne.
Well, because it was important to his dad. You know, his dad died so young, and you know, his dad got to see him win in '82 at Quad Cities, and he got to see a couple other things. But you know, he was gone in the mid '80s, and you know, Payne was just starting to get things going. But you know, his dad was a super duper player, and his dad was also friends with a lot of really good players who had been professionals. Some really interesting characters like Kai Laffoon, who was a super player in the 30s on tour, didn't win a bunch of stuff, was a great ball hitter. A lot of guys went to him and said, you know, take a look at my swing. But he was super duper crazy. Like, he would do stuff like, if he 3-putted, he might stick his hand into a thorn bush and take it in and take it out until it came out all bloody. And he would say, that'll teach you from getting into the shot again. And so his wife said to him, Kai, she said, if you ever do anything like that again, you ever hurt yourself or hit yourself with a club, which you did many times, she said, that's the end of the relationship. So Laffoon is playing in a tournament and everything's going fine. Then all of a sudden he makes 3 or 4 birdies and he gets himself into a touchy situation because now he's in the lead. And then one of the guys who had already finished is sitting in a tree, Bobby Cruikshank, heckling Kai Laffoon as he's trying to 2-putt from 30 feet, and then he 3-putted. So Laffoon throws the putter. Then he starts looking around the back of the green at all the bushes, and he finds a huckleberry bush. And he goes over to the huckleberry bush, and he puts his right hand in, and he takes it out, and it's bloody. And he puts it back in, and he takes it out, and it's bloody. And his wife is there, and she comes up to him, and she said, that's it. I told you, if you ever did anything like that again, it's over. And he said, it has nothing to do with that. And he said, I just don't like huckleberry. And so that was somebody that taught Payne how to play super golf and hit a lot of shots. And his dad, you know, taught Payne how to let the ball fall to the right. And so because it meant a lot to his dad and because he lost his dad early and because he didn't get to see the things that Payne ultimately did, you know, that became then something that he carried. It was important to his dad. Okay, now it's important to me. And he was a U.S. Open type player. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, here's a guy who swung at 80% for sure. And he put the ball in play. I played with him. I mean, you know, it was insane. He just, you know, make that easy swing and looked like you're not even doing anything. And, you know, and the ball would go a mile and he had a lot of irons around the hole and he had super duper touch and he was great to play with. And if you played with him, he would wear long pants and a normal cap. So you didn't realize that it was Payne Stewart because he wasn't dressed in his costume and stuff. That's what I said to him the first time he showed up for a game. I said, I'm so glad I see that stupid-ass costume with the +4s and all that dopey stuff. And he laughed, and we got along so well. But, so it was critically important to him. And remember, he had a chance to win in '93 and lost to Lee Jansen up at Baltusrol. I went there, actually, and I was there at Olympic in '98 when he lost to Lee Jansen again. Lee's 2 U.S. Opens, Payne's 2 misses. And, of course, I was there in '99. And after he won in '99, and I had a chance to run into him, but when we did some TV that night, I remember, and I said to him, how proud would your dad be right now? And, and he said he'd be so effing proud, Peter. He said, and I guess, Peter, you'll be wanting to talk to me tonight. I said, you know what? You're not really that interesting. I said, I'd actually rather interview Phil because I really felt like he should have been the winner. And so, of course, he laughed and he came up and we did a show and stuff. But no, I loved him. And I was with Payne 2 weeks before he died. We were October 10th, 1999 at the old course in St. Andrews. He was playing the Dunhill Cup. I was there doing some interviewing and whatever. He finished his singles match, sat down behind the steps. We were supposed to have played golf a few weeks before, but he did a goofy Chinese impersonation, and he thought I was going to, skewer him for it, which I would have. And so we blew off the show. And so we're sitting there, and it's October 10th, and he goes, well, okay, so I'm going home to Orlando, and I got to go to Houston for this thing. I'm working on a golf course, and then, of course, there's a tournament there right after. He said, so let's play in November. He said, the first week in November, I'm actually good. If you want to play, and then do the show and then go out for dinner and I'll get drunk and you can drive me home. And how come you don't drink? And then he looked at me and he goes, remember, Peter, we have all the time in the world. And referring to playing golf in November, which Payne never got to see. And 2 weeks and 1 day later, he was gone. And so, that was very personal to me, obviously, because I knew him. And at his funeral, they used a clip from one of our shows together where he said, if I die on my way home, driving home tonight in my car, I'm going to be at peace because I love my family and I love my God and I have a peaceful heart and everything is good and I'm the best man that I've ever been. So if I go right now, I'm going to be okay with that.
What a story. Well, Peter, before we let you go, let our listeners know how they can stay up to date with all the great things you continue to do and follow you online and on social media as well.
I would really just say, my Twitter feed or my Facebook. I'm usually a little bit ahead on Twitter, and then within the next 24 hours, I move it all over to Facebook. But I've got 35 2-minute U.S. Open run-up pieces posted on Twitter. And, of course, I wrote, now every major, I write a new rock and roll song. I posted that the other day. And, my muse is Leonardo da Vinci. So I said, Leo, like you, I do a lot of different things. And I said, I want you to hear this song. So I played Da Vinci the song and he looked at me and I said, well, think about it. I said, there's an original section, a talkback section nobody's ever done before. And I said, there's Elvis hints at the beginning and the end. And, Da Vinci looks at me and he goes, Blackbird was better. So, so I'm just doing everything I can to put up as much good stuff as I can. And I hope people will watch it. And I got a couple things up my sleeve, and you and I will get a chance to talk about it next time we talk because we'll break them together. But Twitter is a good place to follow me because I'm extremely active and, and I let all 16 of my personalities run completely free, and I'm very unpredictable, but I'm never boring. And so, yeah, I'm a good follow there.
Well, Peter, there is no better way to kick off the show on a Tuesday night than getting to spend some time with you, listening to your stories and your insights. Hope you'll come back and join me again real soon, my friend. Always a privilege having you as part of the show.
Yeah, even I was entertained, so that was really cool. So I'm looking forward to the next time. Thanks, buddy. It's always great to be with you. You're my man. You're my man. And listen, you tell these Launchpad people that we have some kind of a contract where I appear regularly because want to get the thing pumped up at the beginning, and you might as well go with the Beatles, which is me and one person. So let's do that, as soon as that thing gets cracking. But tell them I'm on. Tell them I'm in. Tell them we have a deal. Tell them you're paying me such a fortune. We got to get this going.
I appreciate you, Peter. I will definitely
do that. Buddy.
Take care, my friend. All the best to you and your family.
Thanks, buddy. You too.
That's the great Peter Kessler, at Peter Kessler on Twitter. Make sure you give him a follow. He's got such great content and so many great interviews that he's got posted there from his time on the Golf Channel. So please go check him out. And like he said, it's a run up to the U.S. Open. So he's got a lot of things that were in conjunction with some of the historical U.S. Open, some of the great ones from the past. So go check him out online. Again, at Peter Kessler on Twitter, and give him a follow on Facebook as well. All right. Now, before I get to my next guest, Rob Stano, I want to remind you about a few of our sponsors. And first, folks, well, TaylorMade has done it again. The all-new TaylorMade M5 and M6 are out there, and what a great story they are. They both feature speed-injected twist face, which is created through a revolutionary manufacturing process where every single head, and I do mean every single head, is injected and calibrated to the threshold of the legal limit. So basically, every head is made to be tour spicy. So speed for all of us. Check it out online at TaylorMadeGolf.com. And I also want to give a shout out to one of our newer sponsors, the Sandestin Resort, which is surrounded by white sandy beaches and the beauty of the Gulf of Mexico. Sandestin Golf and Beach Resort offers 3 championship golf courses open to the public and 1 semi-private course as well. With recognition from leading golf magazines and reviewers from around the world, each course provides an exciting challenge in different scenic settings. Golfers can choose to play one or all of the courses, which include Raven Golf Club, which is a Robert Trent Jones layout, which played host to the PGA Tour champions back in 2006 and 2007. The Links Golf Club, designed by Tom Jackson, offers a winding layout with a backdrop of Baytown Marina and the Chakawatchi Bay. Baytown Golf Club, also designed by Tom Jackson, offers a 5th set of U.S. Kids Juniors tees. And then you've got Burnt Pine Golf Club, which is a semi-private Reese Jones design, which is available only to registered Sandestin guests. So visit them online at sandestin.com/tee time, or give them a call at 844-887-SAND for more information and to book your tee times as well. All right, now back with me here on the French Lick Resort guest line is Rob Stano. Let me remind you about Rob's background. He is from St. Louis, Missouri. As a junior player in the St. Louis district, Rob won the individual low stroke average trophy and individual total points championship trophy back in 1981. He was a 3-time All-Southwestern Conference player and a 2-time All-Area player in high school. And he played his college golf out in Centenary College, which is in Louisiana. From there, he went on to the PGA Tour, played on the PGA Nationwide and Hooters NGA Tour for 15 years, won 5 times out there. He's now one of the top instructors in the game for both kids and adults. He's annually recognized by U.S. Kids as one of their top instructors. Plus, he is one of the few teachers out there that is helping deaf children learn the game of golf. You've probably seen Rob on the Golf Channel with Golf Academy. He's got a lot of really great videos there available. He is one of their lead instructors. His golf show, which is called The Golf Kingdom, which is outstanding, folks. You can watch it on Blab TV or stream it on the Blab TV app as well. It airs Wednesday nights at 10 p.m. Central Time. Again, one of the best golf shows you're going to find on TV. His Strano Golf Academy is located at Kelly Plantation in Destin, Florida, which is a beautiful facility and one of the great golf courses in that area. And as always, I am honored that Rob is back on the show with me again tonight here on Next on the Tee. Hey, Rob, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing great. Great to be on with you again, Chris. But I really don't know how you follow the legendary, the great Peter Kessler. I'm trying to get my Peter Kessler voice going here, and I can't do it. And I mean, he was the white horse of the apocalypse, and the second horse is the red horse. I'm the red horse following him, and there's just no following the white horse. Hey, it's been great to be on Next on the Tee. Great having everybody tonight. Goodbye. I mean, it's Peter Kessler. How do you follow Peter freaking Kessler?
Look,
the voice of golf.
Well, if anyone can do a Rob Strano, it is definitely you, my friend.
Well, so, listening to Peter reminds me of when I sit down and I have lunch with Mr. Bob Golby when I'm home at my club in St. Louis where I grew up, and I sit down with him every chance I get, and I just sit down and take notes. And listening to Peter just reminded me of so much of the history of the game that is in my head that's just there. It's knowledge. And he just reminds me of so many great things and adds to that knowledge with his great stories. It's just a guy, when he talks, take notes and remember him, because he's got so many stories that are on the tip of his tongue and so many he's just forgotten.
Indeed, yeah, absolutely. A lot of times all I have to do is say hello to Peter and let him go, and then the segment's over. So yeah, there's certainly a ton there. But Rob, before we get into all the golf stuff, and as I talk about in your intro, and you just mentioned, as a kid from St. Louis, I got to know, you living and dying by the Stanley Cup right now? You ready for Game 7?
You know what? The other night I was eating blood pressure medicine like they were M&Ms. I mean, to tell you, I grew up a huge Blues fan. I'm a huge hockey fan, huge St. Louis Cardinals baseball fan, and the St. Louis football Cardinals when we had them in St. Louis. And for those of us that have sat and watched the Blues for years, our coach said it best. Even though we didn't close out at home, we've been a great road team all throughout the playoffs, all throughout the season, which boggles my mind how we can't, defend home ice. But our coach said this in a presser after the game. He said, you know what? If you would have said to me in January, we'd be playing Game 7 for the Stanley Cup, I would have taken it. And we're a good road team, and we've won twice in Boston. We feel good about our chances going back up there. And I feel good about them on the road. It's going to be a great game. All Game 7s are great. And I asked Chris Berman one time, sitting in the locker room in Hartford, I said, Chris, is there anything better in all sports than a NHL playoff game, let alone the Stanley Cup Game 7, the last 10 minutes of those games when they're tied or one goal separates them? It's just on the edge of your seat action where you're just holding your breath. And I'm looking forward to it. And win or lose, I'm proud of our team and the comeback we've made this year. And it's been a great ride. It's been enjoyable to watch as a fan.
So, Rob, I want to obviously switch gears. I want to talk a little golf while I got you on the show. And I had the privilege of spending some time with you back in April when I was in Destin with my boys for our annual golf trip. And you took one look at my swing and said, I can help you improve. And all you have to do is change one thing. And boy, I was excited. I said, it's what? And you looked at me and you said, everything. So, and it started
well, that's, for our listeners, that's
with my weight
far
transfer.
From true. Yeah, that's far from true from our listeners, but yeah, we got together and we worked on your game, and there's something similar in your game that's similar to a lot of players, and it's in the backswing you tend to tilt towards the target a little bit, and the downswing you tilt away. It's a natural cause and effect. You tilt toward, you tilt away. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction, and we see it in golf in that people lean towards the target and then they retreat and go away. And it's interesting that this comes up because on this week's TV show, which debuts tomorrow night on the Golf Kingdom, my show, I talk about this in my pop culture segment, and it's the pop culture segment is the Back to the Future segment, and I talk about, do you time travel on the golf swing by moving away from the ball on the target on the downswing because you tilt at the top and you're trying to buy time to get the club face around and square it at impact. And that's what we worked on a little bit. And it just takes a little time and work to just kind of work yourself out of that tilt and give yourself time in the downswing. And Jerry Haas, who I grew up with, who is the nephew of Mr. Colby, said to me one day, he said, all great swings have time. They don't buy time, they have time. And that's what we're trying to do, is trying to give you a little more time to get the club face around, build your speed on the downswing, catch it solid, and hit a little farther.
And Rob, one of the things that we were talking about is weight transfer, right? And you were talking about, getting me, a little bit more on my left side, on the backswing, and then transferring that to my right side and the transition and on the downswing. Talk about finding the right weight transfer and the balance in your feet and making sure that we are loading up and then unloading in the golf swing.
Well, it's actually a basic athletic or life skill movement that is part of the golf swing. So if I just tossed you a ball and said, here, throw it at that target 15, 20 yards away, you're going to naturally shift to your right and shift to your left. You would never stand perfectly still and then lunge forward and throw it. No one does that. I mean, kids that are learning to throw may do that, but, if you're an athlete and you throw, you shift to the right, shift to the left. You're going to throw a bucket of water. I got a yucky bucket of water and you're going to throw it away. You shift and you shift to the right and throw it. If you don't shift to the right to throw the bucket of water, you're going to lunge forward to throw the bucket of water straight up in the air, and it may come back down on top of your head. If we were, I always use the example, if we decided we were going to revolt and rob Fort Knox, and we were going to have a chain gang passing the gold bullion from the vault to our trucks to take them to our island if as we're leaving the country, if I'm going to pass something heavy from left to right, I'm going to shift from the left to the right. If I try to stay still and pass that chunk of gold bullion to you to my right to pass to your son on the right, well, it's not going to work because I'm going to tear my back up because a chunk of gold bullion is exceptionally heavy. I'm going to have a little shift to the right. I'm going to hand it to you. I'm going to shift back to the left to grab the next one. It's a natural life movement or a natural athletic movement is that little shift to the right turn. So when you swing, it's just a little shift. And by a little, I mean it's an inch if you're looking at shadow on the ground and you've got a little tee stuck on your lead ear, your left ear if you're right-handed, or golf ball there. It's a little 1-inch shift. That accomplishes the move. It breaks your eyes loose and gets your eyes to shift a little to the right. Your nose will turn about 10, 15 degrees to the right, and that gets you turned behind it in the right spot to deliver it athletically on the downswing.
And Rob, let's talk a little bit about putting, because you also gave me some good advice about my putting stroke. And the question you asked me is, where's your miss? You miss on the high side, you miss on the low side. And I told you, for me, I miss on the low side. So how can we do a better job? Let our listeners know, what are some things, if our miss is on the low side of the hole consistently, what are some things that we can do to make more putts?
Well, if your miss is on the low side of the hole, the question you want to ask yourself off the bat is, are your reads good? I'm a certified Aim Point Express coach, and I teach that green reading method, and that tends to eliminate people under reading putts. Everybody tends to under read the break and then hit it too hard and knocks it 4 or 5 feet by. If you have a miss bias, the simple thing to look at is ball position. Usually, if the ball position is too far back, more towards the buttons on your shirt, the zipper on your pants, the face isn't getting enough time to come around and square. Therefore, it's arriving at the ball open, and the ball will miss to the right or the high side if it's a right to left putt. If the ball's too far forward, which is an error you never see, the ball will miss left. If the ball position's perfectly placed, I always tell people I want it to be right in the logo of your shirt. So if your logo is in your left pec on the left side of your shirt, put the ball there. If your stance width isn't too wide, your left foot will sit to where if you put it towards your left toe or your left instep as your foot's pointed forward, that'll pretty much get the ball to arrive at the logo. That gives the face a chance to square and the ball to be launched online with the face square and a little bit of rise in the putter to get the ball turning over and hugging the ground. If the ball position is too far back, the face usually arrives open, you're hitting down on it, and the ball is popping up in the air and starting off to the high side or to the right of your line if it's a right to left putt.
And Rob, one of the things that I love about you the most is how incredibly positive you are. You got a smile on your face. You enjoy what you're doing. Everything about you comes across as being just such a wonderful, positive individual. And one of the things that we talk a lot about on this show is about the negative self-talk that we do to ourselves out on the golf course. We badmouth ourselves. We get down on ourselves, that sort of thing. How do you train your students to, leave that behind, forget about that, be positive, and have the right frame of mind, even if we've hit a bad shot or we put ourselves in a bad position or had a bad hole? How do you recover from that? How do you teach your students to be more positive?
Well, the first thing I do is I have them listen to the way they talk to everybody else in the group. So if you and I are playing, Chris, and you hit a bad shot and you get down and you kind of maybe slam your club on the ground or slam it back in your bag, I usually will give you a pep talk. If you have a bad hole, I will usually give you a pep talk. I will go, it's okay, buddy. Put it behind you. You'll get them on the next hole. And I'll say to the player, I'll go, why don't you ever talk to yourself like that? Why don't you ever become your own best friend? Why don't you become your biggest cheerleader? Tour players, we're our biggest cheerleaders. We had a bad shot. We're like, it's okay. Let's get the next one. We have a bad hole. It's like, okay, bounce back. Let's hit a good tee shot here. Hit a good approach. Give ourselves a look at birdie. If not birdie, make a par. But we're always on to the next thing. It's always, we're a cheerleader for ourselves, and we're going and we're going and we're going. Another example I use is this. Have you ever smelled a smelly trash bag in the kitchen, Chris? Like your wife has said,
Yes.
get this out of the kitchen. What if I bagged that up? We got to the golf course, and on the first tee, I said, Chris, we're going to walk today. I've got a caddy for you, and you're going to carry this bag of trash around all day. Are you going to do that?
No.
No. Good. That was a perfect answer. No. But when we're a garbage man on ourselves, and we just keep criticism on ourselves the whole day, we're just trashing ourselves. We're carrying that stinky trash around all day. We're no fun to play with. Our friends are listening to us going, geez, listen to this trash he's talking about, his garbage. I can't cheer him up. He's no fun. You know, they're just going to kind of exile you to to your own little golf, pity party island. Become your own cheerleader. Get in your corner. Talk about, I'm going to bounce back. I'm going to make a better swing. And keep rooting for yourself all the way through the round. Do what you do for your buddies to yourself. You'll find two things. You'll have a better attitude. You'll bounce back, and you'll be more fun to play with.
Rob, one more before I let you go, and this being what's going on with the U.S. Open this week and that sort of thing. I want to get your thoughts on what do you expect to see. I mean, with the playing conditions, it looks like it's going to be benign weather based on the forecast, maybe a little bit wind, 10, 12 miles an hour, that sort of thing. But what do you expect to see this week out of Pebble Beach, and who do you expect to be on top of the leaderboard?
Well, I got to ask my picks earlier, and they're out there. I sent them in the Golf Channel. I'll put them on social media in a little bit, but we get asked as Golf Channel guys, who are our picks. I picked Dustin Johnson to win it. I wanted to pick Koepka because till you get knocked off, you're the top guy in the totem pile. You're the king of the hill. He's won 2 in a row. Until someone shows they can beat him, to me, he's the guy. Okay, and I just saw a thing out there on the media that the Fox trailers for the U.S. Open that they're running don't include him in several of them. And he saw him, and his friends sent him links to him. So just like he didn't need more motivation, now he's got it because Fox is running promos for the U.S. Open, and he's not in them. So how about that? The guy's won 2 in a row, and Fox is just blowing him up. So Koepka's got a little more chip on his shoulder to go, okay, let's win 3 of these and anybody will pay attention to me now. But Dustin's got unfinished business from when he blew the last one. He had it by the throat. He shot, what do you think? He shot 81 the last day, messed up the second hole. It was all downhill from there. I think it's retribution time for him. He knows how to play the course. It's in his wheelhouse. He knows he could play it for 3 rounds from last time. He just got to put the icing on top of the cake or put the bow on top of the gift. I think he finishes the deal this time. We get asked our dark horses, and here's the guy I picked as my dark horse, and I'm chuckling for the reason I picked him. Matt Kuchar's my dark horse. He's been playing pretty good golf. He was there coming into the final round in Canada this week, had a really good low round there, but I picked Kuchar for this reason. The guy's been fed more crap this year than a portalet. Whether it's the on-course stuff that he's had trouble with, or it's the episode with the caddy where he stiffed the caddy and owed him a ton more money than what he paid him. The guy's dealt with all this and still played pretty good golf. So you know what? The final round of the U.S. Open in contention is nothing compared to the distractions he's faced on the golf course from all that he's self-inflicted on himself this year. So if he's there, look for him to maybe close this out. What I think you'll see out of Pebble Beach is what we've seen from previous U.S. Opens, excluding the 2000 Tiger Woods massacre where he shot 12 under and won by 15. I think you're going to see scores where, like Mr. Kessler said, I think 2 under per day, if things are set up like we hope they are. I think 2-3 under will be your score, low score per day. If you get a guy who's a little bit hot on his game, you might see a 66 or 7. If you get a guy who goes that route more than one day, maybe first, third day, or second, third day, or second and fourth, this is a guy who's dead on his game, and it doesn't matter where they put the flags. It doesn't matter how wide they cut the fairways, how narrow they cut them. This guy's dead on, and it's going to be his week like it was Tiger in 2000 when he went for 12 under. I haven't thought about a winning score, but I think familiarity to the course, because we played on tour every year, I think that's going to yield, no matter how hard they set it up, I think it's going to yield a winning score. If it's benign, around 6 or 7, 8 to 9 if a guy is really dead on his game. Double figures, I don't see us getting there. It won't be an Aaron Hills kind of thing. So, I think we'll be kind of right in that 5, 6, 7 number from the course. I think it's going to play beautifully if it plays with a little bit of breeze, and they've got it set up the way we all hope they do. The USGA hasn't proven to be the smartest bulb in the box, the brightest bulb in the box. So those of us that hope the USGA's figured out or got our fingers crossed. I saw a picture where they've got Mark Russell from the PGA Tour staff helping them out. Mark is phenomenal. The more PGA Tour guys the USGA brings in, the better chance they have of getting it right, because these aren't golf people running the U.S. Open. The USGA, in my opinion, should handle the history of the game, and they ought to let golf people and people that run, big-time tournaments run that tournament for them. And this thing would be fantastic year in, year out. But those are my kind of thoughts on what this year's U.S. Open will look like when they get to tee it up Thursday morning.
Rob, before I let you go, remind our listeners how they can stay up to date with all the great things that you're doing and follow you, whether it's online or it's on social media.
Well, the great thing that's going on right now is my TV show, The Golf Kingdom. It's a golf show unlike you've ever seen. It is a true variety show. It's not just here's a bunch of golf tips. Yeah, we give golf tips. We give things to help your game. But people that know me know it's pop culture themed. We're using movies and songs and catchphrases to help you remember what we're talking about to fix your game. I've got a build it segment. I put my hard hat on. Yes, I do. I put a hard hat on. We help you build your game. I've got guests. I've got, all kinds of people coming in that are experts in the game. We cover all areas, and it's fun. It's fast paced. You can catch it live on Blab TV at blabtv.com. You can stream it by going to Blab TV, go to programming. All the shows are archived there. You can watch it on the app also when it's on. Go to social media, whether it's Rob Stano or Strano Golf Academy on all the platforms. But there's also the Golf Kingdom. We post all kinds of videos from the show. We let you know what times it's on there. I'm on Twitter, Instagram, all over the place. We've got all kinds of fun things. We just filmed the 4th of July show the other day. This week's show is the Father's Day show. I have a real touching tribute to fathers in the Time to Rise segment, which is the last segment on the show, which is motivational. You don't want to miss the Father's Day segment there. If you do miss it, like I said, it'll be out there on social media. I'll post it all over the place for you just to watch that segment. But we filmed the 4th of July show. It's a tribute to founding fathers. I will leave you with that. There's a little costume involved as I represent the founding fathers. It is the declaration of your golf independence coming up on the 4th of July show on the Golf Kingdom.
Rob, it's a great show. I always enjoy watching it. It's informative. It's fun, and I'm certainly looking forward to the Founding Fathers show, so that ought to be a lot of fun as well. But, Rob, I can't thank you enough, my friend. You're the best. Thanks for taking time out of your night to come back and be a part of the show. I look forward to catching up with you again real soon.
Well, it's always great to be on it, and even though I'm the second horse tonight, it's okay because the first horse was a stallion and a thoroughbred. I'm just one of those horses pulling the carriage right in behind Peter Kessler. And got great guests coming on. Thanks again for having me.
You bet, Rob. Take care. All the best to you and your family, my friend. We'll catch up soon.
Thanks. Great talking to you.
That's a great Rob Strano at Strano Golf. You can find him on Twitter. And again, folks, the Golf Kingdom is an absolutely outstanding show. Take a look at it on blabtv.com. You can download the Blab TV app as well. His show is, like I say, it's a lot of fun. It's very informative, and you're going to really enjoy yourself when you're taking a look at it. So a lot of great stuff and a lot of great content that Rob continues to push out, and we look forward to catching up with him again real soon. All right, I've got my next guest, Tom Patri, hanging on the line. We're going to get to Tom on the other side of this real quick message about our good friends over at the PGA Tour Superstore.
This segment of the show is brought to you by the PGA Tour Superstore. See why golfers everywhere are proud to call PGA Tour Superstore their golf pro shop. Visit them online at PGATourSuperstore.com. Now back to Chris and more of the show.
Right before I get to Tom, I want to give a quick shout out to one of our new friends over at Positive Vibes Golf. Go online and check them out at PositiveVibesGolf.com and follow them on Twitter at PVibesGolf. Their head covers and putter covers are a very unique way to keep your mind focused on positive thoughts, and they're a great training aid on the course because you see it, you smile, you stay positive, and that's what we're all about here. They've got happy images that are going to be right there in the forefront of your mind. Again, visit them online at PositiveVibesGolf.com. And now back with me here on the French Lick Resort guest line is our good friend Tom Patri. Tom is a Golf Tips Magazine top 25 instructor. He is also the new director of instruction at the Hawthorns Golf and Country Club up in Fishers, Indiana. And folks, if you're anywhere near Indianapolis and need help with your golf game, go check out Tom. Check him out on his website, tompatri.com. Subscribe to his newsletter and get in contact with him to book a lesson because TP is absolutely one of the best in the game, and I'm always honored to have him back with me on Next on the Tee. Hey, TP, how are you, my friend?
Christopher, my man, what's going on, big boy?
I'm doing well, my friend. How are things up in Fishers, Indiana?
Yeah, well, it's actually been wonderful, Chris. The membership has been really welcoming. It's a wonderful place. It's about actually, I went downtown Indy yesterday on my day off. It took me about 30 minutes to get into town. So I'm about 30 minutes north of Indianapolis and Fishers. The Hawthorns is a really good golf course. Very, very, as I said to you last time, very excited about how good the golf course is. I've been getting out to play a little bit in the evenings. It's a hard golf course. It's not for the faint of heart. Practice facility's wonderful. And yeah, I can entertain non-members here on a case availability basis. So if anybody's within 1,000 miles and they want a good golf instructor, I'm here for them.
There you go. So, Tom, one of the things that I want to talk about, first and foremost, it doesn't seem like it's possible that it's been a year since the last U.S. Open, because it seems like just a couple of months ago, you and I were talking about how you were there managing the driving range at Shinnecock Hills for the U.S. Open. But boy, here we are again, and it's been a year later. So, your thoughts on this week and what you expect to see out at Pebble Beach?
Well, we talked a little bit, I texting back and forth, Chris, and I just think that, I think this golf course brings a lot of players into the mix that, weren't in the mix at a place like Shinnecock at par 70, 7,300 yards, weren't in the mix at a major like the PGA at Bethpage Black at 7,600 yards, par 70. Here's a par 72 golf course that plays, arguably right around 7,000, 7,100 yards, depending on conditions, but like Peter said in his segment, I woke up during one comment he was making. I had nodded off, but he made a reference to Pavin winning at Shinnecock, and I think Pebble brings back in the Kevin Kisners of the world and the Matt Kuchars of the world, the Jordan Spieths of the world, and doesn't exclude them from the championship. So I think it's a really open contest.
Tom, one of the things when I look at Pebble Beach, and it certainly isn't a long course, right? It's just a little under 7,100 yards, so much shorter than what we've seen at Augusta National or certainly at Bethpage Black. So when you see a course that's about 7,100 yards long, and if the course play is benign and the weather conditions aren't supposed to be bad, so and to me, weather is what is going to make a difference. It's certainly what makes St. Andrews difficult, because if St. Andrews, if the weather over there isn't bad, boy, that course really seems defenseless for how far these guys hit the ball, and they can really go low. So what's your expectation? If the weather is nice, is this going to be something where we see guys go really low? Or do you think that even though the conditions aren't going to be as bad as maybe we saw in 72 when Nicklaus was, trying to, shoot 74 just to win the golf tournament, all of a sudden now with the winds down that we could see guys shooting 4 rounds in the 60s? What's your expectation from a score perspective?
Yeah, I think it's a very, very, it's a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde golf course, Chris. I mean, if it is benign, like you say, it's very gettable. I mean, these guys don't have to hit driver a lot. They can keep the ball in play. I think, a guy like Francesco Molinari, who drives the ball in play and is a wonderful iron player, has great distance control. A player like that in benign conditions can do a lot of damage here. I disagree with Rob a little bit, your previous guest, that if it is benign, I think you can see double digits at Pebble. But conversely, if you just get 2 out of the 4 days that are bad, the whole game changes. Everything changes dramatically. So I think it's very weather dependent. I think it's very, obviously wind and rain dependent, and listen, we've seen enough golf tournaments on the Monterey Peninsula to know how fast the weather can change and how off the forecast can be. So I know the forecast is not very bad, as you said, but that peninsula, the weather can change as you snap your fingers. So it is all weather dependent there.
Tom, I want to switch gears a little bit. And one of the things that I've heard you say over the last year is that golf is overtaught but undercoached. Talk about what you mean by that.
Well, I think, Chris, in 2019, we've got TrackMan, we've got KVS, you've got FlightScope, we've got V1 Video, we've got the Golf Channel, we've got multiple golf publications and magazines, we've got call-in radio shows, we've got talk radio shows like this one, and there's just an overplethora of golf information being thrown at the general public. And, so many people come to my lesson tee and their head is spinning. I think we have to make the game easier to grow the game. I think we have all these grow the game initiatives. I think the first way you grow the game is allow people to understand that it's not impossible to play good golf. So I think I do 2 things. I teach and I coach, and I teach the X's and O's in at the club level, at least, in a very simplified manner that's understandable. And one of the comments I get all the time is, "Oh, I understand that. Why didn't somebody say that to me 15 years ago? I understand what you're saying. It's always been so complicated." And then the second thing is I coach a lot, and most of my coaching is done on the golf course. I think you have to get on the golf course with your students and play the game. On the lesson tee, we play golf swing. On the golf course, we play golf. And I think those are very different things in terms of the learning process and the coaching process. So I don't think you coach on the tee. I think you coach on the course. So you need to get out there and teach people how to play the golf course.
And to that end, Tom, right, and you mentioned it a little bit a moment ago. I mean, it seems like instruction, a lot of focus is on TrackMan and spin rates and smash factors and all that sort of stuff, right? But is there still place in golf instruction, sort of the old school sort of ways? And you talked about it, a couple of weeks ago, how you've got that, sort of wooden plane, you've got your logo on there and that nice wood setup that helps people with their swing plane. That's sort of an old school sort of thing. Is there still a place for that, or does everyone sort of want to go down the technology path, and I want to hit it into a video screen, and I want to see what my spin rates are and all that sort of stuff? Where does old school technique still have a place in golf?
I'm going to tell a story that I'm not particularly proud of, Chris, but a couple of weeks ago, a guy who'd been chasing me around online on social media, who I could tell by our conversation, he started texting me about coming to me and see me at Hawthorne's. I could tell I was not a good fit for him. He was very, very technical. He was very aggressive about, being technically savvy. And I said to him on a couple of different occasions, I said, I don't think we're a good match. I said, I'm a lot more fundamental than that. And he came for a lesson, and he was almost, I think angry is the wrong word, but he was very angry that I wouldn't use TrackMan and I wouldn't use this device and do that device. And that, he was set up, aimed 30 yards to the right, and came dead over the top of it, trying to get the ball back on the line. I said, unless you improve your lines, unless you improve your setup conditions, you're never going to have the club on plane anyway. So don't worry about TrackMan. Let's just get your setup better. And he was very, very belligerent that the lesson was a setup-based lesson, that a pre-shot swing setup-based lesson. And he went away very angry and sent me the nastiest text message afterwards that, I was so old-fashioned and I had to get with the times. And I kind of laughed to myself, because this guy's going to be the same golfer a year from now than he is right now. So I think there's a place for technology and instruction. I don't think that technology is not viable. I just think that we overuse it sometimes. And 99% of the people that come to you at the club level don't. If you ask them to define smash factor, they couldn't do it. So what are you worried about smash factor for when you don't even know what it is? I think we're out of control that way sometimes.
Tom, one of the things that you always pound into my head is how important a short game is. Short game, short game, short game. And I think that's a part of the game that too many of us, weekend hackers, we don't spend anywhere near enough time on. We're out buying a new driver, hoping that we can get an extra, 10 yards with it. When for players like me, and look, I drive the ball, 230 on a good day. If it's downhill, downwind, 235. And on a 410-yard par 4, that extra 10 yards is really the difference between me hitting a 4-iron or a 5-iron into the green, and then hoping, that that shot's going to hold the green. But like Gary Player always says to me as well, the way to improve your scores is from 100 yards in and really turning 3 shots into 2 when you're inside of 100 yards. So for a lesson for our folks tonight, let's not even go 100 yards. Let's go 50 yards. How can we do a better job of turning 3 strokes into 2 from 50 yards in?
Well, how about by starting by going to the short game area? How about just showing up? Today, it's funny you say that, Chris. Today I was, I had a full docket of lessons. I taught from 8 a.m. till 6 p.m. straight through. And the short game area at the Hawthorns is right behind my tee, maybe 15 yards behind my tee. So it's just over my shoulder. And I gave a whole day of lessons, and the range was pretty crowded all day. And I counted 4 people that went to the short game area in 10 hours. So I don't know what it's going to take for people like you and I to convince the listener that the first thing they have to do is go spend time in that area. I think if you're just a reasonable athlete, just a decent athlete, there's a lot of things that you can figure out on your own about short game as far as club selection and, and how to manage the size of your swing and where to place the ball in your stance and where to put your weight and your hands a little bit forward. Basic fundamental things in hitting chip and pitch shots. And then certainly, if you have a good coach, they can refine that and make it a little more sophisticated and a little bit more user-friendly for you. But I don't see people spending any time in that area because I just don't. I know it's not exciting. It's not glamorous. It's not exciting as hitting the driver and or hitting a hybrid over the pond from 200 yards away onto the green. I get it's not as exciting as that, but the bottom line is if you can't do things from 30 or 40 yards in, not even 50 yards. Most people that I see at the club level, they don't play short game. They play hockey. They shunk one, they skull one, and they 3-putt. And that's their short game. And they could change that so quickly, and really enjoy the game so much more and shoot such lower scores. I think they have to show up first.
Tom, one more before we let you go, and I want to talk about lag putts because if there's going to be a couple of areas where we're going to take 3 shots and turn it into 2. It's from 50 yards in the chips. You talk about that and getting more practice there. But it's also taking those, lag putts, those 40, 50-foot putts, and turning that from 3 putts into 2 putts. How do we do a better job judging the distance and making sure that we are stroking the putt appropriately for those longer ones?
And I think that's a great question, Chris. I think that, lag putting for me is 3 things. Basically, it's the length of my stroke, it's the pace of my stroke, and it's center face contact. So starting with the basic premise of center face contact to calibrate and be able to replicate a distance time in and time out, most people don't hit the putt solidly because they move their head a lot or they move their body a lot while they're swinging their arms. So I think, a stable base and a rock solid centered head is a good place to start to make consistent contact. A lot of times when I go out and start practicing my putting, I'll take a bunch of balls to the side of the green and I'll just aim across the green, not even at a hole or not even at a target. And I'll just make strokes and I'll just try to feel center face contact and pay attention to where I'm striking it on the face of the club by keeping my head still and my body stationary and swinging my arms. I want to see if I can just make center face contact 15 or 20 times in a row. Can I put the same face on the back of the ball every single time? Most people don't hit the center of the face. They hit it on the toe, the heel, and the center in different variables, and consequently they can't even control the strike, so they can't control the distance. And then after I've got my center face contact, then I'll start to calibrate the size of my stroke and the pace of my stroke in terms of my arm swing, and I can kind of dial things in. When I say to you, funny, you repeat it, you always chuckle, short game, short game, short game. How about putt, putt, putt? How about a lot of distance control putts? How about a lot of lag putting? How about a lot of fundamental contact qualities, and then calibrate the size and pace of my stroke. I mean, you're so right. Because lag putting is almost like a lost art, and you want to turn 3 into 2 on the greens. I see too many players at the club level walking off the 18th hole with 4 and 5 3 putts, basically because they can't get that first putt close enough.
Tom, before I let you go, remind our listeners once again how they can follow you, whether it's online on your website or on social media.
Chris, all the social media platforms, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, I'm on all of those. And then obviously my website is just very simply tompatri.com. It's easy to get to me. My website has my email address and my cell phone on it. So it's easy to get to me. It's just a click on tompatri.com and all the information is there. So if they're in the Midwest somewhere, especially in Indiana, come on down and let's get together.
Tom, I can't thank you enough for continuing to be a part of the show. It's always a great time when you are here. I look forward to catching up with you again in a couple of weeks, my friend.
Christopher, it's always a pleasure to be on with you. You're my favorite listen, even when Kessler and Strano go on for hours and hours. I just got to get back to sleep now. I think I may be shaking and shivering all night after those two, but you're the best. I think you do a great job in the airwaves. I think you're a great tribute to golf, and I hope everybody out there has a great U.S. Open week.
Thank you very much, TP. Take care, my friend. We'll catch up again soon.
Thanks, pal.
See you, Tom. That's a great Tom Patri, Patri, tompatri.com, and at Tom Patri on social media. You need help with your game? He's your guy. I've got my next guest, Chris Finn, hanging on the line. Going to get to Chris on the other side of this real quick station break.
You're listening to Next on the Tee, available as a podcast on TuneIn and Podbean. Let's get back to Chris and more of the show.
And now joining me here on the French Lick Resort guest line is Chris Finn. Chris is the founder of Par 4 Success, and that is the number 4. So PAR, the number 4, success.com. It's a great golf fitness and physical therapy company located in Cary, North Carolina. They've got a fantastic looking 6,000 square foot facility up there. They can help you with improving your golf performance. And if something's hurting while you're playing or while you're practicing the game, they can help alleviate that pain as well. Chris is a licensed physical therapist, a certified strength and conditioning specialist. He is Tireless Performance Institute certified, and he is also a certified nutrition coach. He has grown Par 4 Success from being a physical therapy business that he literally did out of the back of his car, and he's grown that, tremendously. It's a wonderful business. It's one that Goldman Sachs has as one of their 10,000 small businesses poised for growth, and I'm very excited. He is with me tonight here on Next on the Tee. Hey, Chris, thanks for being a part of the show.
Thanks for having me on, Chris. Really excited to join you and chat with and kind of hopefully help out a lot of your listeners.
I hope so, too. So, Chris, first of all, I want to start, really a couple of years ago. Par 4 Success is exploding onto the golf and the fitness scene, and I want to get into that. So sort of take me back to, as a guy who graduated from Babson College not all that long ago, you literally started the business out of the back of your car, and now you've got a 6,000 square foot facility, a facility that it seems like, from reading your story, you have a facility, you outgrow that a year later, you get another one, you outgrow that a year later, and now you're into this facility. Talk about how that growth has happened.
Well, it's been an awesome ride. I think I think the reason I actually went out and started it on my own is, obviously we're in Cary, we're only about an hour north of Pinehurst. It's a huge golf area here in the Triangle. And, having a love for the game of golf and loving kind of the sports physical therapy side of things and sport performance side of things, looking around, there really wasn't anybody doing it at a really high level, locally in our area. And, when I went to the Tireless Performance Institute, my first certification back in I guess it was 2010, 2011, it was still kind of relatively new. It wasn't really mainstream yet. And just saw a huge opportunity. I've seen a lot of patients who were golfers and they were just like really bummed and sad because they were getting old. They weren't hitting it as far as they used to. And, I couldn't tell you the number of people that were, that I've talked to, since then and on, but that have said, I'm thinking of giving up the game. I'm thinking of just, putting the clubs, in the garage. It's just not enjoyable anymore because I got to hit 3 into every par 4. Every time I play, I'm laid up on the couch for, 3 days. I can't go on that golf trip with my buddies anymore. It hurts. It's not worth it. So it was kind of and looking at the way that it was not being done, I felt an opportunity to do it better. And that's kind of what the driver for everything that we do at Par for Success is. We believe that we can do things better. We believe we can help people rehab quicker and get back on the course better. We believe we can do a lot of, research into the actual golf fitness world and the techniques that are being used. And, one of the big goals or reasons, that reached out to you was, we have done, research for the last 4 or 5 years on over 700 golfers. And we've got databases on, what is an actual good club head speed for a 50-year-old guy. We've basically, our goal is just to give golfers the best possible information based on actual science and research that, as a physical therapist, that's kind of what you're taught, that you practice based on evidence-based practice. And I think in the golf fitness world, we practice on Instagram-based practice a lot of the times. Helping.
Indeed.
Yeah. So kind of trying to give golfers a simple, what's the minimal amount of work that you can do to produce a meaningful result that is actually backed by, somebody who's actually researched it with other people just like you.
So, Chris, to the point you made a moment ago, for our listeners out there that are like me and we're in our 50s, and maybe we've got an ache or a pain, or we're trying to figure out how to do it a little differently or better. How do you talk about the data that you have and relating that swing speed into, hey, here's what you need to focus on in order to get better. Here's an exercise, a stretch, some of the things that you need to strengthen in order to get to the swing speed that you should have at that age.
Yeah, well, I think, the first thing that I always look at, if we talk kind of your average, club golfer, that's generally, let's say, kind of 40 plus. For most of them, there's 4 main rotary centers that golfers have, to simplify it. Basically, your hips have to be able to rotate, your spine has to be able to rotate, your shoulders have to be able to rotate, and your neck has to be able to rotate. And the interesting thing that we see with a lot of our data is that, basically 50% of golfers over the age of 50 will fail in at least 2 of those areas. And if you fail in even one of those rotary centers, you have to introduce side to side or up and down movement in your golf swing. So you've had 2 great instructors on before me that know way more about the golf swing and how to help golfers perform better from a technical stand of things. But they're going to be forced to kind of help a golfer through compensatory mechanisms to deliver the club repeatedly and consistently at a plane or a path that's going to optimize their performance on the course. And so, we know off of our data that right off the bat, over 50% of the chances are if somebody walks onto a tee and they're over the age of 40, they probably work at a desk job, or that 50% of them are going to fail at least 2 of those. So there's really, everybody talks about club head speed and the equipment. Peter was talking about the equipment and the difference it's made. I think he said like 30 or 40 yards difference and how much further it goes now. And that's kind of the sexy talk, right? Is how fast you swing. Can you hit it 300? But none of that matters if you can't rotate. You're setting yourself up for injury. And honestly, most people, if they simply focus on improving those rotary centers, they'll swing faster just because all of a sudden they can move the way that's more efficient and the way that their golf instructors trying to get them to move.
So talk about that, Chris. Talk about some of the, you've got a wonderful sort of 6-step process to assess where we've got issues, and goodness knows I failed miserably on a couple of them. So talk about some of the things that you do to assess, like where in the body, okay, you need to fix this. Talk about how you go about that assessment. Yeah,
so I think the first piece is, I sent you that home assessment, that we have on our website that basically that takes golfers through the big 4 or 6 movements that they need to do, the 4 main rotary centers. And then there's just some other movements that we like to see just for general athletic movement. The way I think about it as a golfer, I think of it as a pie on 4 different slices. I think the top 2 slices are you can improve technically and you can improve your equipment. And if those are 2 things that are done outside of the walls of my facility. Where our expertise is and where I can help golfers, or any golf fitness professional or medical professional, is I think the third piece of the pie is mobility, which we just talked about in terms of you have to be able to rotate in all of those 4 centers. where you're going to introduce sway or slide or early extension, or you're going to cast it or, chicken wing, whatever it may be. The fourth part, and this is the part that everybody wants to talk about, and that's power. And power is a very simple math equation of how much force can you produce and how fast can you move it. And unfortunately, as we get older as golfers, you tend to turn from, your muscles tend to turn from prime rib to more like beef jerky every year. So you lose that elasticity, you lose that ability to become, to be as explosive as you were when you were 20. And so that's where the next thing we look at is, we say, okay, how fast are you swinging it? And this is, our database, which is available for free to any golfer who wants to go to our website and download it. But, so you can see, let's say if we use the 50 to 59-year-old age bracket, if a guy's swinging 100 miles an hour, they're an average 50 to 59-year-old. That's the 50th percentile for 50 to 59 years. So if they're swinging 50%, and then we've done through our other research, looking at, there's 3 main power tests. So we'll have the golfers go through those power tests. And if in those 3 tests, let's say they're performing in the 90th percentile, so they can create a lot of power athletically, but we look at their club head speed, and their club head speed's lagging because that's only 50th percentile. That's a golfer that I know already has the horsepower in their body as is right there and then today to produce more club head speed. And it's either that we need to get their nervous system to just let them, let it out. And that's where you hear about a lot of the overspeed or speed training devices. That's going to help those individuals, assuming that they've passed the mobility. If they haven't passed the mobility and they go right to the speed devices, that's where we get calls of dislocated shoulders and hurt backs and all this other stuff. But the golfer who passes the mobility, who has way more power than what they're demonstrating in their club head speed, that's somebody who they're going to get better really, really quickly, and probably going to get more out of, seeing a golf instructor optimizing their equipment. If you have the flip of that, you say you have somebody whose club head speed is, we'll use that same group, 50 to 59. They're swinging 109 miles an hour. They're in the 90th percentile for that age group. But then if we see their power markers are all in the 25th and 50th percentile, and they failed 3 of the rotary tests, that is a ticking time bomb waiting to happen. So that's somebody where the first most important is we got to get them rotating so the chances of them hurting themselves are decreased. And then from there, then you're looking at, through a golf fitness program, trying to improve their ability to create vertical force, horizontal force, rotational force. If we get into all the kinetics in terms of ground reaction forces, then that's how that program changes. But I just think it's really silly and dangerous for a lot of people in the golf fitness world who you go into the gym and you just pick what you did out of Golf Digest. There's no assessing. I think that's the biggest crime that we have in our industry right now is there's a huge lack of assessment, and we just guess. We go with what we saw a DJ doing on Instagram or, on Twitter or whatever it may be, what the latest Golf Digest cover may be. Oh, they're doing that, so that means I should do that. Without realizing that, their dispersion between how fast they swing on average compared to the average golfers, at least 10% higher. So you're comparing apples to oranges, but yet we're trying to fix our average golfer with, orange, who are apples with orange fixes. And it's just silly, and it's golfers are wasting a lot of time and getting hurt and losing years that they could be playing and enjoying the game.
Yeah, and to take that a step further, Chris, because I think one of the things that I read on your website is too many of us are doing exercises and we don't really know why. Right? We don't. To your point, we saw it in Golf Digest, we saw it on a YouTube video, we saw it on a special, that week on the tour. But we're doing an exercise and we don't know what the outcome of doing that exercise is. What's the benefit? Why am I doing it? I don't know. I saw it somewhere. So talk about, making sure that we are doing exercises that are made for us and whatever, where we have a weakness in our strength and our mobility. How do we recognize that?
So I think the best way I can do this, I'll use a kind of a case. One of our members, he's been with us for about 6 years now. He's 72. I think he's in the midst of a 12-day golf trip right now. But he started when he was 66. And so he came in and we did the same test that I just talked about. We took him through the mobility test, the power test. We saw where his club head speed was. I think when he came in, he was swinging maybe, mid 80s, kind of 84, 85 miles an hour. So the first thing that we did with him was, he hadn't been working out. He's been kind of a C-level executive, traveling a bunch, sits at a desk. He failed all 4 of the rotary tests. So step one is going to be, for every golfer, do you pass those mobility tests? So for him, a lot of his exercises in the beginning were geared around improving the quality of the tissue. His was very much like beef jerky. And so we helping with a lot of soft tissue work, manual work, giving him a lot of stuff to do on his own to get that tissue more, it's not going to turn into prime rib, but, at least somewhat more elastic. And then as he started, being able to rotate more, all of a sudden you started seeing, A, his pain went away, but then B, you started seeing his speed creep up. So the next thing we say, okay, now that he's actually rotating, now it's safe to give him more horsepower. So if you do pass all those rotary tests, you have the ability to get from point A to B, then you've kind of earned the right from a fitness and performance standpoint. You need to build strength because as you get older, you naturally are going to lose it. The average golfer, decade to decade loses, 10 yards at least. So if you can even just maintain among your peers, you're going to be gaining. So I think that's where then, we looked at with him and in his ability to create vertical force, which we measure with vertical jump was just horrid. So we worked a lot of leg strengthening, obviously core strength in terms of the ability to transfer power up from the legs as those got stronger was important. And then as we started to see those power numbers increase, again, we continued to see his club head speed go up. And so I think it's important for golfers that you go for a lot of people go for the initial assessment, they get the program and then they're off. I think the key is you need to reassess at least, 3 times a year, figure ideally quarterly, but at least 2 to 3 times a year, because you're going to have changes that occur as you play a lot, as you age, just things happen in life. And so by continually reassessing him, he's gone up he started at 84 6 years ago. He just hit his personal best. I think last month he swung 99.8 miles an hour. And that's his average swinging speed, at 72. So, I mean, that's just by continually reassessing, adjusting what he's doing and making it that it's doable. Everybody doesn't need to be in the gym for 6 days a week and, 10 hours a day. And we've got people that we work with, they do it 3 days a week for 30 minutes. And as long as you know what you're going for, you can be really targeted and do it in a way that's actually useful for people. And I think that's the key is if you assess it, you know what you need to do and it can be done in a manner that fits into daily life, which is so busy for everybody.
Chris, before I let you go, now that you've whet the imagination of our listeners, how can they find out more information, be a part of what you guys are doing, and whether that's, getting online, reaching out to you to come out to do an assessment, and then also follow you on social media as well?
Yeah, I think for social, I mean, it's just at Par 4 Success. I think, like you said, PAR, the number 4 Success. What I did actually do for all the listeners, I set up a personal page just for all your listeners, Chris, that they can get the home assessment for free. Normally we charge $10 for it, but I set it up for them for free. It's just parforsuccess.com/next. So if anybody listening wants to go there, basically just tell us where to send it. We'll send you basically that home assessment like you saw has kind of those rotary tests. And then we'll send them, they let us know, how they did on them, and we'll send them some free fixes to kind of start addressing those issues. Anyway, we're on all the major social. But what I wanted to do just as thanks for having me on and just to help us, our goal and our mission is to help as many of the average golfers add years to how long they can play. And like I said, that first part of it, everybody needs to start at is answer the question, can I actually rotate? And then if you can answer that question, then you can continue the conversation. So parforsuccess.com/next, that's set up for all of your listeners to go to for free. And we can start a conversation there. And we do free discovery visits and calls. So we're happy to talk with anybody. We work with golfers. I think we're in 8 or 9 countries at this point virtually. If anyone give us a call, happy to talk about your situation. Even if it's not working with us, I think our mission is to get you with somebody near you, who can help you.
Well, I really appreciate that, Chris. That's outstanding stuff. And again, it's Par 4, the number 4, success.com/next. So, Chris, thank you so much for doing that. And thank you so much for taking time out of your night to come and be a part of the show. I hope you'll come back again soon and keep us updated with all the great things you're doing, because it's been fantastic having you here tonight.
Definitely will. Thanks so much for having me, Chris. Love the show.
I appreciate you. Take care, Chris. All the best to you and your family.
You too.
That is Chris Finn. Again, it's Par, the number 4, success.com. Put a /next on there, and you're going to get the opportunity to get a free assessment, see what you're doing, and get some opportunities to make your game a little bit better, maybe make it a little bit less painful, right? If you've got some aches and pains, maybe you get some work in there with some of the things that Chris's and their assessment does to help you loosen that area up, get a little more distance, get a little more comfort, get a little more fun out of playing the game of golf. So check that out and let me know what you think. I'm telling you, it's certainly something I'm going to incorporate into my daily routine, because I tell you what, I 6 assessments and I failed a couple of them pretty badly. So I've got to get some better range of motion in what I'm doing. So let me know what's happening for you. I think that's fantastic of Chris to do that. So looking forward to hearing a lot more about it and having Chris back on the show again soon. All right, folks, time for me to put a bow on this edition of Next on the Tee. My sincere thanks go out to Peter Kessler, Rob Strano, Tom Patri, and Chris Finn for joining me tonight. Please check out our website, nextonthetee.net. We've got our guest schedule up there for you, so you'll be able to figure out who's going to be joining us on the show. And if you've got a question that you want to get on the show for one of them, please let me know. I'll be glad to do it. And like I mentioned at the top of the show, please check us out on launchpaddm.com and click on the subscribe button. That is very important to us. We'd really appreciate your support there. You can also stream the show on great sites like Podbean, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Audio Boom, Player.fm as well. And folks, we really can't thank you enough for being, a part of the show and continuing to make us a part of your golfing content. It really means a great deal to us. We're honored that you're doing it. So we look forward to catching up with everybody again next week. And until then, hit 'em straight, my friends.
You've been listening to Next on the Tee with Chris Mascaro, where PGA and LPGA pros and top instructors and media members go to tell their stories. Join us the same time every Tuesday to hear more stories about the